Rome was burning down around him, and he did not flinch. Think about the last time your world cracked open. Call you did not want to answer. The email that changed everything in a single line. The moment the floor dropped out and your heart started pounding before your mind even understood why. Most people in that instant lose themselves. They spiral, they panic, they become someone they do not recognize. But there was a man who trained his entire life for exactly that moment. And when it finally came, when the republic he loved was collapsing into dictatorship, he stayed calmer than the men who had won. How? What did he know that they did not? Hold on to that question, because the answer is a 3-step code, and by the end of this, it will be yours. His name was Cato, Cato the Younger, and to understand why he did not break, you have to understand what he was standing against. Rome in his time was rotting from the inside. Bribery was normal, loyalty was for sale. Powerful men bought elections the way you might buy bread. Everyone had a price, everyone bent. And into that world walked a man who simply would not bend. Not for money, not for threats, not for the most powerful general who ever lived. They say Cato trained himself deliberately. As a young man, while other senators wore comfortable robes, he wore rough, dark fabric that scratched his skin. He walked bareheaded through burning summer heat and freezing winter rain. He ate the plainest food. He went without. Not because he was poor, he was wealthy. He did it on purpose. And here is what almost no one realizes about why. He was not punishing himself. He was practicing. Every discomfort he chose was a small rehearsal for a larger one. He was teaching his body a single lesson over and over, that pain is not the same as harm, that being uncomfortable is not the same as being destroyed. He was building a nervous system that would not betray him when everything was on the line, because he knew something was coming. He could feel it. The Republic was drifting toward a single strongman, and Cato had already decided he would be the last one standing in the way. Most people wait for the storm and then try to learn to swim. Cato learned in calm water so that when the storm came, his body already knew what to do, and the storm was coming faster than he knew. Here is where the first step of his code reveals itself, because Cato did something in his mind constantly that almost no one does. He divided the world in two. On one side, he placed everything he could not control, what other men thought of him, whether he won or lost, whether he was rich or poor, praised or hated, alive tomorrow or dead. On the other side, he placed one small thing, the only thing, his own choices right now, in this moment, his character, his response. That was it. That was the whole first step. Everything outside your will belongs to fate. Everything inside your will belongs to you. And you suffer, Cato understood, only when you confuse the two. Stop and feel how strange this is, because you do the opposite all day long. You tie your peace to things you cannot command. The traffic, the other person's mood, the number on the screen, whether they text back, whether the meeting goes well. You hand your inner calm to 100 things that were never in your hands to begin with. And then you wonder why you feel so out of control. Cato felt none of that, not because nothing hurt him, but because he had drawn a hard line between what was his and what was not. When a man insulted him in the forum, spat at him, once even punched him, Cato did not react with rage. He simply noted that the man's cruelty belonged to the man, not to him. He would not carry what was not his to carry, but a line in your mind is not enough on its own. Because life does not politely stay on its side of the line. Life comes for the things you love, and that is exactly what happened next. Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon. Civil war. The one thing Cato had spent his whole life trying to prevent was now real, marching toward Rome with legions behind it. The Republic was dying, and Cato stood on the losing side of history. This is the moment that should have broken him. Everything he had built his life around was crumbling. His cause, his country, his friends, scattered and dying. If ever a man had earned the right to despair, it was here. So watch what he does instead, because this is the second step of the code, and it is the one that changes everything. Cato had a practice. Long before disaster arrived, he would sit quietly and imagine it. He would picture exile. He would picture defeat. He would picture the death of the Republic. He would picture his own death. not to torture himself, to disarm the fear in advance. There is a strange power in this, and modern psychology has a name for it now. They call it emotional inoculation. When you rehearse a hardship in your mind before it arrives, the shock of it, when it finally comes, is smaller. You have already walked the road. Your brain has already been there. The thing that ambushes other people simply cannot ambush you. Soldiers are trained this way. Surgeons are trained this way. The best of them mentally walk through the emergency 100 times in calm, so that in the real moment, their hands do not shake. Cato was doing this 2,000 years before there was a word for it. He had already imagined losing Rome, so when he began to actually lose it, he did not fall apart. He got to work. Now pause and bring this into your own life, because you have felt the opposite of this. You have lain awake at 2 in the morning, and the fear that visited you was almost never about the present moment. You were safe in your bed. Nothing was actually happening. The terror was about a future you had never rehearsed, a version of tomorrow you refused to look at directly, and because you would not look at it, it grew. In the dark, unexamined, the fear becomes a monster. Cato's move was to turn on the light, to look straight at the worst thing and say calmly, and if that happens, what then? I will still have my choices. I will still have my character. The one thing that is mine, no one can take. That is the strange freedom at the center of this. The man who has already accepted the worst outcome has nothing left to be threatened with. You cannot control a person who is not afraid to lose. And Cato was not afraid to lose. He had practiced losing his whole life, which brings us to the final step, the one that made him unbreakable, the one that decided how his story ends. The war was lost. Caesar had won. Cato had retreated with the last of the resistance to a city called Utica in North Africa. Caesar was coming, and everyone knew what would happen next. Here is the thing you must understand about Caesar. He was famous for his mercy. He wanted to forgive Cato publicly. He wanted to stand over his greatest enemy and pardon him, because a pardon would prove that Caesar now held the power to grant life and death. To forgive Cato would be to own him, and Cato saw the trap inside the kindness. This is the third step of the code, and it is the hardest. Cato understood that a man's final freedom is not in what happens to him. It is in his response. Caesar could take the Republic. Caesar could take Cato's life, but Caesar could not make Cato accept it. He could not force Cato to legitimize the thing Cato had opposed with his entire being. The response remained Cato's and only Cato's to the very end. So on his last night, they say Cato did something almost unbelievable. He sat and he read a dialogue by Plato about the immortality of the soul. Calm, composed, he had dinner with his friends. He spoke about philosophy. He had, in his mind, already crossed the line between what he could control and what he could not. The fear had already been rehearsed and released. All that was left was the response, and that was his. He chose to die free rather than live as a symbol of another man's power. You do not have to agree with his choice to feel the terrible strength in it. Here was a man the most powerful ruler on earth could not touch. Not because he had an army. He had nothing. He was simply unownable. Now, bring all of it home, because you are not facing a dictator or a dying republic, but you are facing your own collapses in your own scale, and the code works exactly the same. So here is what you do tonight. 3 steps. Draw the line. Take whatever is crushing you right now and split it into 2 lists. What is mine and what is not. Their opinion, not yours. The outcome, not yours. Your next single action, yours. Give the rest back to fate. Second, rehearse the worst. Ask out loud, and if the thing I fear actually happens, what then? Walk all the way to the bottom of it. You will find, almost always, that the bottom still has a floor, and on that floor, you are still standing. Third, guard your response. When the world does its worst, remember the one thing no person and no disaster can take without your consent: how you choose to meet it. That is the fortress. It was always the fortress. Rome fell. Cato did not. Everything outside you can be taken. Your comfort, your plans, even the future you were counting on. But the way you stand inside the storm was never theirs to take. It was always yours. And the calm you are chasing was never going to come from the world going quiet. It comes from the moment you stop needing it to. Sit with that tonight. And if this reached something in you, stay a while, subscribe, and let the next one find you when you need it.